Hashtag the Panopticon feed complete script. Hashtag by Mr. Minter. Act 1, The Dread Builds. Imagine you're standing in the woods at 3 a.m. Not your woods. Not familiar woods. Deep Texas. The kind of place where the darkness isn't just an absence of light, it's a presence. It has weight. It presses against your chest. And somewhere out there, past the tree line, something is watching you. Not moving. Not making a sound. Just watching. Through glass. Now here's the thing that nobody talks about when they analyze these shows. That feeling, that specific, skin-crawling sensation of being observed through a lens, your nervous system is not malfunctioning. It is not picking up a ghost. It is not responding to folklore or suggestion or the ambient creepiness of an old bridge. It is picking up something real. Because there is something behind that glass. There is a presence on the other side of the lens. Patient. Calculating. Waiting for you to break. And once you see what it actually is, once your brain makes that connection, you cannot unsee it. The show stops being a ghost hunt. The forest stops being the threat. The whole horror of it flips completely inside out. And what's left standing there in the dark, holding the camera, watching you through the glass, is so much worse than a demon. The Panopticon section. There's a concept called the Panopticon. It was designed as a prison. A circular building where every single cell is visible from one central tower in the middle. The genius of it, the truly disturbing part, is that the prisoners can never actually see whether the guard is in the tower or not. They don't know if they're being watched right now or not. And that uncertainty alone is enough to control their entire behavior. Forever. You don't need a guard. You just need the possibility of a guard. Now think about what it feels like to be a crew member on that set. You're not a ghost hunter. You're not an investigator. You are a target. The camera isn't documenting reality, it's extracting a reaction from you. Every red recording light, every audio feed, every lens pointed in your direction is an extension cord running straight back to one person's ego and one person's editing bay. And here's where it gets genuinely unsettling. A narcissist's gaze has a very specific quality to it. If you've ever been close to someone like that, really close, in a workplace or a relationship, you know what I'm talking about. It doesn't feel like being seen. It feels like being cataloged. Like you're being measured for how useful your reaction is going to be. Like your genuine fear, your genuine confusion, your genuine pain, all of it is just raw material. That woman standing in the Texas woods at 3 a.m., feeling something malevolent staring at her through the camera glass? Her survival instincts were firing perfectly. Because the setup she was standing in wasn't designed to find ghosts. It was designed as a machine to extract a breakdown from a real human being, package it with dramatic music and jump cuts, and sell it as a Halloween special. The forest wasn't the trap. The lens was the trap. And the thing behind the lens wasn't supernatural. It was a guy with a contract, a production schedule, and absolutely zero interest in whether she walked away from that woods mentally intact or not. That's the first horror. That's the one that lives in the trees. But it gets worse. Because once you understand how the lens works, once you see the Panopticon for what it is, you start pulling on a thread. And that thread connects to a legal machine, a marketing machine, and a physical building in the middle of Las Vegas that is somehow the most honest thing he's ever built. And none of it has anything to do with ghosts. Act 2, the illusion cracks. Here's a question nobody asks. If any of this was real, if even one piece of genuine, verifiable, paranormal evidence had ever been captured on that show, why would you need a non-disclosure agreement? Think about that for a second. If you genuinely caught a demon on camera, if you genuinely documented something that science couldn't explain, if you were sitting on footage that would fundamentally alter humanity's understanding of death and the afterlife, you wouldn't hide it behind a contract. You'd be on the front page of every newspaper on the planet. You'd be in a university lecture hall. You'd be changing the world. Instead, every single person who works on that set signs a document that legally prevents them from telling you what actually happened. That's not protecting supernatural secrets. That's protecting a brand. And when you really sit with that, when you let that land, the whole architecture of the show reveals itself. Because what those NDAs are actually containing isn't evidence of ghosts. It's evidence of a workplace. A specific kind of workplace. The kind where the guy at the top has figured out that fear is a renewable resource, and the people below him are the ones generating it. Jay worked on that show for over a decade. A decade of night shoots. A decade of being psychologically primed before every investigation, told what the location's history was, what to expect, what the energy was going to feel like. A decade of having his genuine reactions captured, edited, and repackaged without him having any control over how he was portrayed or what story was being told about him. And when he left, silence. Not because there was nothing to say, because there was a document that said saying it would cost him everything. That's the Iron Curtain. That's the thing that keeps the illusion intact. Not the darkness, not the folklore, not the dramatic music. A legal agreement between a man and the people whose vulnerability he built his empire on. But here's where it gets almost darkly funny. Because he didn't just build a legal machine to contain the truth. He built a marketing machine to sell the idea that the truth was even more dangerous than you imagined. He built the lost tape. Picture this. An episode gets quietly pulled from the broadcast schedule. No explanation. Just gone. And then the rumor starts circulating online, in fan communities, in comment sections at 2 a.m., that the footage was too dangerous to air. That network executives watched it and refused to put it on television. That what was captured that night was so genuinely threatening to human psychology that showing it publicly would be irresponsible. And your brain at 3 a.m., already primed by 2 hours of night vision footage and dramatic bass drops, your brain does exactly what it's designed to do. It leans in. Because we are hardwired for the forbidden. We are hardwired for the mystery box. The thing we cannot have is always the thing that feels most real, most significant, most worth chasing. He knows this. He has always known this. So the tape never actually disappears. It never gets locked in a vault. It gets repackaged. It becomes a streaming exclusive, a digital download, a paid ticket experience at a museum in Las Vegas where you sign a waiver before you walk through the door. The forbidden footage always finds a way to cost you exactly $49.99. And the genius, the genuinely cold, calculated genius of it, is that by labeling something forbidden, he doesn't have to prove it's real anymore. Blurry footage, glitch edits, a panicked whisper in a dark room. That's enough. Because you're not watching journalism. You're watching a mystery box that was specifically designed to stay locked. The monster was never in the footage. The monster was always in the business model. And then there's Las Vegas. If the show is the panopticon, the surveillance machine, the lens is his eyeball, then the museum is something else entirely. The museum is where the panopticon becomes physical, where you don't just watch the horror through a screen. You pay to walk inside it. Act 3, The Artifact Matrix. Let's talk about Las Vegas. Because if the show is the digital matrix, the lens acting as his floating eyeball, then the haunted museum is where that psychological sandbox hardens into brick, mortar, and velvet rope. It is the physical manifestation of the entire hustle. And it is, without a doubt, the most honest thing he has ever built. Because it is the only place where the exchange of cash for engineered dread happens right out in the open. Hashtag the architecture of the waiver. Before you are even allowed to step onto the creaking floorboards of that mansion, they hand you a clipboard. It's a legal liability waiver. Now, if you are primed by the marketing, your brain reads the document through a filter of cosmic horror. You think, asterisk, this place is so spiritually volatile, the air is so thick with demonic residue, that I am signing away my rights, because a curse might attach itself to my soul. Asterisk, it makes you feel like an explorer stepping into a forbidden tomb. But read the text like a lawyer or a cynic or someone who understands set design. The waiver isn't there to protect you from the afterlife. It's there to protect the balance sheet from the physical reality of the building. The museum is a masterpiece of sensory deprivation and psychological manipulation. It is a labyrinth of pitch-black corridors, narrow choke points, abrupt strobe lights, and heavy, artificial air conditioning drops. It is specifically engineered to induce hyperventilation, panic attacks, vertigo, and fainting. If a customer passes out from claustrophobia, trips over a hidden step in the dark, and breaks their wrist, that waiver ensures they can't touch a single dollar of his net worth. He didn't build a portal to hell. He built a high-end funhouse with a legal iron curtain around it. #### the economy of murderabilia. Once you're inside, you realize the collection isn't made of supernatural anomalies. It's a curated warehouse of human trauma. He doesn't just collect old antiques, he aggressively outbids competitors for murderabilia, the physical debris of real-world tragedies, suicides, and serial killers. You walk past the actual death van used by Dr. Jack Kevorkian. You stand in front of the belongings of notorious murderers. You look at artifacts tied to the tragic, untimely deaths of ordinary young people. And this is where the narcissistic loop completes itself. A normal person looks at real-world tragedy and feels grief, or a desire to look away out of respect. A narcissist looks at tragedy and sees utility. He buys up the worst moments of other people's lives, wraps them in neon magenta lighting, places them behind plexiglass, and charges the public a premium ticket price to gawk at the wreckage. He takes a regular garage sale wine cabinet, the Dybbuk box, which independent journalists and its original owners have openly admitted was backed by a completely fabricated internet story, and treats it like the Ark of the Covenant. Why? Because the fiction is profitable. The lore keeps the lights on. #### the final haunting. And what about the people who work there? The tour guides and production hands who have to pace those dark, windowless rooms for 8 to 10 hours a day, breathing in stale sage smoke and repeating gruesome scripts about murder and damnation? When they burn out, when their mental health cracks, when they leave the job exhausted and broken, the museum has a built-in excuse ready for them. Asterisk, the artifacts got to them. Asterisk, the house is cursed. Asterisk, a dark attachment followed them home. It is the ultimate corporate loophole. He has figured out a way to take his own intense, high-pressure, exploitative working conditions and blame them on the supernatural. If you break down under his management, it's not because the workplace is toxic, it's because a 200-year-old demon is acting out. #### breaking the feed. That is the final layer of the trap. From the Texas woods at 3 a.m. to the Vegas Strip, the mechanics never change. It is a massive, self-sustaining pyramid scheme of psychological control. He creates the fear. He controls the camera. He signs the paychecks. He writes the NDAs. And if the environment doesn't produce an actual ghost, he simply manipulates the psychology of the room until the workers break, the guests scream, and the audience clicks next episode. But the minute you see the pipeline for what it is, the second you connect the lens to the ego and the ego to the cash register, the magic trick fails. The voice loses its power. The face becomes unbearable. The screen goes black. The cache is deleted. And you realize that the only way to truly defeat the entity in the sandbox is to just stop giving it your midnight hours. Imagine standing alone in the woods at 3 a.m. Not your woods. Not familiar territory. Deep Texas. Here, darkness isn't just the absence of light, it's a presence. It weighs on your chest, suffocating and oppressive. And somewhere beyond the tree line, something is watching you. It's not moving. It's not making a sound. Just observing. Through glass. Here's the unsettling truth that often goes unmentioned in analyses of these shows. That skin-crawling sensation of being scrutinized through a lens? Your nervous system isn't malfunctioning. It's not reacting to ghosts, folklore, or the eerie ambience of an old bridge. It's sensing something real. Because there is a presence behind that glass. Patient. Calculating. Waiting for you to falter. Once you recognize what it truly is, once your mind makes that connection, you can never unsee it. The show transforms from a ghost hunt into something far darker. The forest ceases to be the threat, the entire horror flips inside out. What remains in the darkness, holding the camera and watching you through the glass, is far worse than any demon. The Panopticon section. Consider the concept known as the Panopticon. Originally envisioned as a prison, it features a circular design where every cell is visible from a central tower. The brilliance and terror lies in the fact that prisoners can never tell if the guard is present. They exist in a constant state of uncertainty, unsure if they're being observed or not. This ambiguity alone is sufficient to control their behavior indefinitely. You don't need a guard, you only need the possibility of one. Now, reflect on what it feels like to be a crew member on that set. You're not a ghost hunter or an investigator, you're a target. The camera isn't merely documenting reality, it's extracting a reaction from you. Every red recording light, every audio feed, every lens aimed in your direction serves as an extension cord directly linked to one person's ego and editing studio. And here's where it gets genuinely unsettling. A narcissist's gaze carries a specific weight. If you've ever been close to someone like that in a workplace or a relationship, you know what I mean. It doesn't feel like being seen, it feels like being cataloged. You're measured for the utility of your reaction. Your genuine fear, confusion, and pain are reduced to raw material. That woman standing in the Texas woods at 3 a.m., sensing something malevolent staring at her through the camera glass? Her survival instincts were firing on all cylinders. Because the setup wasn't designed to uncover ghosts, it was a machine engineered to elicit a breakdown from a real human being, packaged with dramatic music and jump cuts and sold as a Halloween special. The forest wasn't the trap. The lens was the trap. And the entity behind the lens wasn't supernatural. It was a man with a contract, a production schedule, and zero concern for her mental well-being once she left those woods. That's the first horror, the one that lurks in the trees. But it only gets darker. Once you grasp how the lens operates, once you recognize the panopticon for what it truly is, you begin to unravel a thread. This thread leads to a legal machine, a marketing engine, and a physical structure in the heart of Las Vegas that somehow embodies the most honest thing he's ever created. And none of it has anything to do with ghosts. #####2. The NDA valuation grid. Why are the legal documents so airtight? Because the financial risk of the truth leaking out is calculated down to the penny. Hypothetically, if a crew member breaks their contract and goes public with the reality of the set design, the corporate penalty matrix kicks in. Asterisk liquidated damages clause asterisk standard high-tier reality NDAs often carry a preset financial penalty starting anywhere from $100,000 to $500,000 per violation. Asterisk the revenue wipeout asterisk if a leaked story destroys a 2-hour seasonal special's broadcast value. The network faces an immediate loss of advertising revenue and streaming metrics valued at over $1.5 million for that specific time slot. The contract isn't signed with ink, it's signed with the threat of complete financial ruin. It keeps the workers quiet because the cost of speaking out is higher than the price of staying in the dark. ####3. The live museum funnel. The screen is just the advertisement. The physical building in Las Vegas is the cash register. Let's look at the hypothetical daily loop of the artifact matrix. Asterisk general admission ticket asterisk $48.00, $54.00. Asterisk the RIP premium access upgrade asterisk $75.00, $89.00. Asterisk average daily foot traffic asterisk 300, 500 visitors. Multiply that by a full year of operation, throw in gift shop revenue from selling cursed t-shirts and replicas, and that single physical building generates an estimated $5 million to $12 million annually. And the beauty of the model? The main attractions, the Kevorkian van, the serial killer belongings, the banned artifacts, are one-time capital expenses bought at auctions for a fraction of their ongoing earning power. They don't require health insurance, they don't ask for a raise, and they never threaten to call the labor board. ##### The final calculation. When you add up the columns, the truth of the operation becomes simple math. You have an investment of a few $1,000s in digital audio equipment and old folklore stories, funneled through a high-pressure workplace where the lowest-paid tech guy takes the highest psychological risk. That raw human stress is captured on a lens, protected by a $500,000 legal shield, and converted into a multi-million-dollar streaming and real estate fortune for one single individual at the top of the pyramid. It's a perfect machine. The numbers don't lie, they don't hallucinate, and they don't get possessed at 3 a.m. They just clear. Act 4, hypothetically ***. Let's look at the actual math of the matrix. Because if you want to know how a machine functions, you don't look at the paint job, you look at the ledger. Hypothetically, if you strip away the tactical vests, the dramatic size, and the night vision green tint, what does the actual balance sheet of a 20-season paranormal empire look like? How much cash does it take to turn a regular human being's raw panic into a corporate asset? Let's lay down the numbers. #####1. The episode production ledger. Hypothetical estimates. On paper, a standard cable network or premium streaming service budgets a specific amount per hour of television. For a high-tier reality show, let's look at the estimated breakdown of where that cash actually flows per single episode. Expense line estimated allocation the target. The anchor salary, Zach, $100,000, $150,000, paid directly to the executive producer/host to maintain absolute control of the narrative grid. The primary crew pool, Aaron, $25,000, $30,000, seniority pay for the frontline operator who takes the physical hits on camera. The technical grind pool, Jay/Billy, $10,000, $15,000, flat rate talent fees for the guys drawing the circles and running the software cables. Local guest/witness compensation $500, $500, often a minimal appearance fee or stipend given to a vulnerable local or struggling business owner to repeat the location's history on camera. Post-production sound and effects editing $20,000, the actual factory floor where ordinary camera drafts and static are turned into demonic frequencies through heavy audio compression. Outro, turn off the feed. A woman feeling something malevolent staring at her through a lens. She was right. We started in the trees and we ended up in a spreadsheet. And that journey from cosmic dread to line items on a production budget, that's the whole trick, isn't it? The horror was always downstream of the money. The fear was always upstream of the profit margin. The woods were just the set. And here's the thing I keep coming back to. This isn't really about one guy in a tactical vest screaming at empty rooms. That would be easy. That would just be bad television. This is about a machine. A format. A specific way that the entertainment industry learned to take real human vulnerability, real fear, real stress, real marriages under pressure, real people burning out in dark hallways, and liquefy it into content. He didn't invent that machine. He just runs one of the most efficient versions of it. And the lens is everywhere now. Every reality show. Every workplace with a camera culture. Every platform that rewards you for performing your worst moments in public. The Panopticon didn't stay in the prison. It got a streaming deal. So, what do you actually do with that information? I think you do what she did. You recognize the gaze for what it is. You stop performing for it. You walk out of the woods at your own pace, on your own terms, without giving the lens the breakdown it was waiting for. You smash the feed. Because the only entity that actually loses power when you stop watching is the one holding the contract.